They laughed when she walked in. Agent Claire Monroe, 32, barely 5'3", with a quiet voice and second-hand suit, was assigned the case as a joke. At least that's what the others in the bureau thought. Her file had been stamped administrative reallocation, a polite way of saying she was being sidelined. After blowing the whistle on a corruption scandal inside a high-ranking task force, Claire was labeled a liability instead of a hero. They sent her to the basement office where old files went to die. But this case was different. It began with a postcard. No return address, no fingerprints, just a message. The final domino falls June 6th. Are you watching? The Bureau dismissed it as a prank. Claire didn't. She connected it to a string of disappearances going back 15 years. Journalists, whistleblowers, local investigators, people who got too close to something no one wanted found. Each one had posted or spoken about an alleged shadow organization before vanishing. They called it the Vanishing Circuit. Claire opened boxes no one dared to touch. She cross-referenced security logs with hospital admissions, airport records, even Reddit threads. And it all pointed to one man, Director Alan Graves, the golden boy of the FBI, charismatic, untouchable, decorated, the man who'd once shaken the president's hand and smiled for Time magazine. Claire had seen his name once, buried in a heavily redacted transcript from a witness who'd mysteriously recanted. She dug deeper. Every file she touched suddenly required review. Surveillance footage she requested arrived mysteriously corrupted. Her badge access was restricted. Her phone buzzed with blank messages, and then someone tried to run her off the road. The message was clear: back off. But Claire didn't. She went dark, burned her phone, stayed in motels. She began recording everything: notes, theories, voice memos. What she found was monstrous. An operation codenamed MIRAGE, authorized by Graves during his early rise to power. A rogue task force meant to silence threats to national stability. What it actually did was erase people, legally, quietly, completely. It had been shut down on paper years ago, but it never stopped. And the next target was her. She left a dead drop for the press. She knew they'd suppress it, but not forever. She confronted Graves in the marble atrium of the Hoover Building. She wore a wire. He smiled when he saw her. "Agent Monroe," he said smoothly. "I thought you'd transferred." "I followed the silence," she replied. He didn't flinch. "You don't understand the stakes. You never did." "What about Rachel Ewan, Tom Harper, Kayla Diaz?" she demanded. "They vanished on your watch." He leaned in. His voice was silk-wrapped steel. "They were chaos. I'm order." "You're a ghost maker," she hissed. He laughed. "And you? You're just a file waiting to close." But that was his mistake. Because Claire had already sent everything, live, to 24 independent journalists, to the dark web, to encrypted drives scattered across the country. While Graves had been busy covering his tracks, Claire had been building a noose. Within hours, the story broke. Graves' office was sealed. Claire was reinstated, provisionally, but her trust in the system was gone. The country watched as headlines exploded. FBI director linked to shadow kill program. But Graves had one last card. Before his arrest, he whispered to Claire, "You think this ends with me?" Mirage had founders. She froze. "Who?" He smiled. "That's classified." Then he said something that chilled her to the bone. "You only found me because I let you." That night, Claire returned to her motel. The door was ajar, her files gone, her computer wiped. But there, on the bed, sat another postcard. This one read, "Nice move, Agent Monroe. Ready for the real game?" The postmark? Eldridge Hollow, Montana, a town that officially ceased to exist in 1992. But someone was still living there, and watching. They told her Eldridge Hollow didn't exist. But Claire Monroe had the postcard in her hand, and the postmark was real. She traced it to a long decommissioned postal route buried in Montana's backwoods. The town had been wiped from federal maps after a so-called chemical spill in 1992. But no one ever found bodies, no environmental reports, just silence. Now it was calling her. She didn't tell the bureau she was going. She didn't trust anyone, not after what Graves said before his arrest. "You only found me because I let you." He was the beginning, but not the head of the snake. Claire drove through the night, headlights carving through fog like a knife. Every mile felt heavier. At dawn, she reached a rusted sign barely hanging on a bullet-riddled post. "Welcome to Eldridge Hollow, established 1876. The trees here felt wrong, too still, too quiet. She drove into what looked like a ghost town, abandoned buildings, cracked sidewalks, overgrown streets, no people, no cars, but something was watching. Her phone lost service, her compass spun, the air was thick, humming, like the town was holding its breath. She parked beside an old post office, its windows boarded up. Inside, she found dust-covered mail, and something else. Files, thick manila folders, marked with the MIRAGE seal, and photos, one of her, one from 3 days ago, another of a man she didn't recognize, gray beard, sharp eyes, standing in front of what looked like an underground vault. The file labeled him RAVEN. She heard a noise, a shuffle. Claire drew her sidearm and crept toward the sound, down a corridor, through a rotted doorway, into a basement with flickering light. And there he was, the man from the photo. He didn't flinch, just looked at her with something between pity and amusement. "You shouldn't be here, Agent Monroe," he said. His voice was calm, almost kind. "Who are you?" "I built MIRAGE," he said. "Graves? He was a tool, a weapon with a shiny badge." Claire steadied her aim. "Then you're the reason people are dead." "I'm the reason your country still stands," he replied. "We eliminated chaos, corrected trajectories. You think democracy survives without shadows?" She felt her stomach churn. "You erased innocent people." "No one's innocent," he said, "not after what they know." She could feel it now, how deep the rot went. "You don't want truth, Agent Monroe. You want a villain to blame." "Then you'll do just fine," she said coldly. He smiled. "You're too late." And before she could react, the floor beneath her cracked. She fell. Darkness swallowed her. She woke hours later, underground, in what looked like a bunker. Monitors lined the walls, surveillance feeds from cities across America, names, faces. A woman's voice echoed from hidden speakers. "We've been watching you, Claire. You're not what we expected, Ma, but you'll do." Claire stood, blood trickling down her forehead. "Who are you?" she shouted. "We're the next phase," the voice replied. "And you just opened the door." Then all the screens went black, except one, a live feed of her sister, tied to a chair, crying, and a countdown. 00:59:58. Claire's knees buckled. She screamed. The hunter had become the bait. The screen glowed in the dark bunker. Claire Monroe stared, numb, as her sister cried on the feed, gagged, tied to a chair, trapped in a room she didn't recognize. The countdown beside her, 00:59:52. She had 1 hour, and no idea where her sister was. Her hands trembled. Blood dripped from a cut on her temple. The voice echoed again through the bunker's hidden speakers. "You wanted truth, Claire. This is what it costs." She ran her fingers across the monitor's frame, found a wire, yanked it, static. Then a flicker, metadata hidden in the signal. Coordinates. They pointed to a military storage depot. Abandoned, officially, and less than 20 miles from Eldridge Hollow. Claire bolted from the bunker, lungs burning with adrenaline. Outside, the woods were still, but the quiet was hostile now, like the trees were holding secrets. She hot-wired a rusted ATV she found near an old gas station and tore through the forest like the devil himself was chasing her. Minutes ticked. 004631. She broke into the depot through a collapsed ventilation shaft. Inside, rows of rusted weapons crates, decayed uniforms, dust. But the lights were on. Someone was here. Footsteps echoed. A shadow moved past the far wall. Claire pressed her back to the cold steel and listened. 3 voices, 1 female, 2 male. "She's ahead of schedule," said a man. "She always was," said the woman. "But we don't need her to win, just to play." Claire crept forward, gun drawn. Through a gap in the crates, she saw a metal door. Behind it, muffled sobbing. Her sister. She charged. 2 steps in and alarms blared. Lights flooded the room. A dozen red lasers snapped onto her chest. The voice returned. "Now live." "Game over, Agent Monroe. You broke the rules." Claire didn't blink. "I don't play games." She raised her gun, shot the nearest light. The room plunged into chaos. She ducked, rolled, fired, twice. Took a bullet to the shoulder, kept going, kicked the door. It didn't budge. She screamed, slammed her body into it. Again, again. It gave way. Her sister was there, barely conscious. "Emily, I'm here," Claire whispered. She cut the ropes with a knife from her boot. Then she heard it. Tick, tick, tick. Under the chair, a bomb. The timer, 00319 and counting down. Claire's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed Emily and pulled her onto her feet. The hallway behind them shook. Gunfire. "They're sealing us in." She dragged Emily into the ventilation shaft. Fire erupted behind them. Heat chased them like a living thing. They hit the ATV and sped off, just as the depot exploded. A shockwave lifted them from the ground. Claire landed hard, body aching. Emily was coughing but alive. They lay on the forest floor, both shaking, both breathing. But the silence didn't last. A new voice buzzed in Claire's earpiece. One she hadn't heard before. Male, calm, cold. "You passed the first trial. Impressive." Claire looked at Emily, who was staring at her like she didn't know her at all. "What is this?" Claire demanded. "What do you want?" The voice replied, "This isn't about what we want, Agent Monroe. It's about what you are willing to become." A drone appeared overhead. It dropped a black envelope at Claire's feet. Inside, a photo of her mother, dead for 15 years. Except in this photo, she was alive and standing beside graves. The caption, "We all vanish eventually." Claire's breath caught. Emily clutched her arm. "Claire, what does that mean?" Claire stared at the picture, her mind racing. If her mother was alive, then this went deeper than Mirage, deeper than graves. This wasn't just corruption. This was generational, a legacy of silence, a bloodline of secrets. And Claire Monroe had just become its next inheritor. The photo didn't shake in her hand. Claire Monroe's hands never shook, but her heart did. Her mother, dead and buried when Claire was 17, now standing alive, smiling, next to the very man who orchestrated a government-sanctioned erasure program. Alan Graves. Emily stared at the picture, her voice a cracked whisper. "That's not possible, is it?" Claire didn't answer. She couldn't. Because deep down, something in her had always questioned the way her mother died. Single car accident, no autopsy, no photos, cremated within 24 hours, too clean, too fast, too final. The envelope contained coordinates, not digital, handwritten, coordinates that pointed to a remote location in northern Alaska, above the Arctic Circle, no roads, no airstrips, just cold white emptiness. And yet someone had built something there, a compound, code name, POLARIS. Claire didn't hesitate. She left Emily behind, safe, hidden. If Claire had learned anything, it was this. You don't drag the innocent into the fire. You walk in alone. She used a charter pilot, fake ID, off-grid gear. And still, When she arrived at the last refueling point, someone was waiting for her. A woman, tall, sharp-eyed, military posture. She handed Claire a sealed tablet. It powered on without touch. A message appeared. "Welcome home, Claire." The woman said nothing else, just nodded toward the copter. Claire boarded, 2 hours of ice and wind later. She saw it. A facility buried beneath the snow, disguised as a geological monitoring station. But the antennas, Claire recognized the frequency. MIRAGE used it. Before it was shut down, only now, it was stronger. Claire stepped onto the frozen tarmac and into the unknown. Inside, she was led through steel corridors. Everything was spotless, sterile, like a hospital married a prison. And then she saw her mother, alive. No aging, no oxygen tank, no signs of a car crash, just a calm smile, like she'd been expecting her daughter all along. "Claire," she said, as if they'd only spoken yesterday, "you've come so far." Claire couldn't breathe. "You died." Her mother nodded slowly. "I was erased. For your protection. For theirs." Claire's voice cracked. "Protection from what?" Her mother looked into her eyes and said the one word Claire feared more than any other. "You." Claire staggered back. "What are you talking about?" Her mother raised a hand. A panel slid open behind her. A wall of files, labeled Project Oracle. Claire opened one. Inside, her baby photos, medical scans, brainwave maps, surveillance logs from age 5, and a line stamped in red, classified genetic anomaly, unstable potential. Her whole life had been a lie. The testing, the headaches, the fainting spells, they weren't random. They were results. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were born to see patterns others miss. You call it instinct. But it's more than that." Claire's voice dropped. "You turned me into a weapon." "No," her mother said. "We protected the world from what you could become if you were used by the wrong people." Claire stepped away. "I became an agent to serve truth. Justice." Her mother smiled sadly. "And now you know the price of truth." Suddenly, red lights flashed. An alarm blared. The compound trembled. A guard ran in, panicked. "They've breached the perimeter!" Claire's mother's expression changed. Fear. She turned to Claire. "You weren't the only one we created." And then, the power cut. In the darkness, a voice whispered through the intercom. "Found you, sister." Claire froze. She had no siblings, not according to her file, and yet, the voice was hers. Exactly hers. A perfect match. The lies have shattered. The bloodline has surfaced. But what happens when Claire faces a mirror with a trigger?